Hello, my name is Hannah Kalter, and today I'm going to be presenting my Capstone research presentation for the completion of my master's degree through Georgia College and State University. The first area of growth I would like to talk to you about is my pedagogical knowledge. My pedagogical knowledge is an understanding of best teaching practices, including the general methods of instruction, classroom management, lesson planning, and student assessment. I broke this into three categories, the first being data driven instruction. I grew in an understanding of working with diverse populations and using assessment data through my ELL surveys and strategy for diverse learning project. In my ELL survey, I worked with three students who were learning English as a second language. I assessed their reading, writing, and speaking skills. Then I took this data and developed a plan to present to their families and teachers to best support them moving forwards. Next is theoretical research and understanding. I gained knowledge of educational theory through educational theorist graphic organizers and researching educational theorists in understanding elementary curriculum and assessment. This included researching theorists such as Vygotsky, Piaget, and Montessori. Finally, is understanding of effective teaching practices. I supported my understanding of effective practices through the creation and implementation of a cross curricular project based learning plan for fourth grade students on sound, and studying play based learning in The Power of Play by David L. Kind. My next category is skills which enhance my teaching practices, the first being reflection. I learned to reflect on my practices through project based learning unit reflection, play based learning book club, and assessment portfolios. I designed a project based learning unit and reflected on the assessment data and how I would alter the unit differently in the future. For my assessment portfolio, I built it around an MTSS group of 10 students, focusing on vocabulary acquisition. I created 5 assessments, including assessments for learning, based upon pre quiz and observational data. Next is data driven instruction. I practiced this through the creation of my assessment portfolio and improved upon it with my ELO case study. In the case study, I had to review assessment data from 3 students across 3 grade bands K1, 2 3, and 4 5, who were learning English as a second language. I then took this data and derived a portfolio of the students' strengths and areas of growth to present to their teachers and parents. Next is furthering knowledge. This was learned through my research project proposal, and I improved upon it with my Science of Reading podcast study and my project based learning annotated bibliography. Then there is culturally relevant practices. I learned this through my Funds of Knowledge research project and my ELL survey. In the Funds of Knowledge research project, I had to interview parents of students with a different cultural background than myself and determine how I could use their strengths and background within the classroom. Finally, differentiation. I practiced this through my Strategies for Diverse Learning project and reflected on it with my assessment portfolio. In my Strategies for Diverse Learning, I had to choose 3 new engagement techniques targeted to areas of concern for my students. This included strategies such as inside outside circle and drawing character portraits to work on character traits. My next area of growth is my professional disposition. My first category is culturally responsive practices. I gained experience of working with diverse populations by completing the ELL survey. I learned how to support diverse families with my community agency flyer. This flyer had 10 community agencies families in my school could use. This included The Place, libraries, and food pantries. I distributed this weekly to parents in my newsletter, and I adapted it to support diverse family groups by including agencies that were known in the area to have translators, English classes, and services for diverse populations. I also learned the value of culture through reflecting on my own personal cultural memoir. In this memoir, I reflected on my cultural values and how they were not reflected in the classroom and how they affected my teaching practices today. I was able to adjust my teaching to reflect the different cultures in my room, based upon reflecting on how I was not represented growing up. Next, I grew in working with stakeholders. I learned to support stakeholders with the Working with Families tips flyer that I created for my classmates, and I advocated for working with community members through the community agency flyer. Finally, I learned how to support families through presenting on ways to connect with families and the creation of a plan for implementation for my artifacts bag project. This project had students bring in a paper bag filled with objects that represented who they were culturally, including flags, books, and toys. The final category I grew in was collaboration. I learned to collaborate with communities through researching community resources, and I learned to collaborate with peers during book studies. During book studies, I learned to listen to other people's perspectives and build upon it to advance my understanding of the content. Finally, I learned to collaborate with colleagues during my ELL survey. For this project, I collaborated with a second grade and kindergarten teacher so I could use their students in my survey. I also collaborated with the literacy coach to find developmentally appropriate assessments for younger grade students. My final area of growth was architect of change, the first category being theory and research. I was introduced to research through my research project annotated bibliography, which led to a research proposal and supported the creation of my final social emotional learning research project that I worked on throughout my degree. I supported my understanding of educational theory through working with instructional coaches to find developmentally appropriate assessments for ELL students. Next is my professional knowledge and application. I was introduced to research and applying professional knowledge through the design of an inquiry-based, project-based learning unit, and I practiced using professional knowledge when assessing students through the creation of an assessment portfolio. Next is extended knowledge. This occurred through reviewing literature for my research project, implementing a Funds of Knowledge project, and building an annotated bibliography for a project-based learning unit on sound. This culminated into the completion of my Capstone research project. Finally, advocacy. I advocated for the use of play-based and project-based learning units in the classroom through a presentation to my colleagues, including fourth grade teachers, assistant principals, and literacy coaches. I also advocated for the use of social emotional learning in the classroom through my capstone presentation and my research presentation to my peers. Now I would like to talk to you about my action research I completed. I focused on the question, how do targeted social emotional lessons impact students' relationship skills and teachers' perception of positive classroom communities? I chose this question because of a lack of research. Research on social emotional learning tends to lead towards how social emotional learning affects academics, but not relationship skills. My methods included explicitly teaching 8 weeks of Leader in Me lessons that contain the relationship skills tag, interviewing 2 specialist teachers in classes where students work together consistently before and after the study to determine any changes in relationship skills in classroom community, having students reflect weekly on skills they learned in the Leader in Me lessons in class, and observing students as a non-participant observer. This included observing students at recess, during STEM bin time in the mornings, and during collaborative math tasks. Some patterns I noticed included increased respect, including respectful speaking and respectful listening. Students were less inclined to talk over each other. I also noticed increased communication skills, including eye contact, speaking clearly and truthfully about their feelings, and speaking calmly. Students were less likely to yell at each other and were less likely to argue. I also noticed an increased compassion. Students were more likely to bring in others who looked different from them or who were not part of their usual friend group to play or work together. Students were also more likely to help each other, and they waited for each other to stop talking in order to speak, where in the beginning of the study, they would often talk over each other. Finally, was an increased positive environment. Specialist teachers and observations noted less fighting, increased communication about their feelings, and a willingness to cooperate. My findings. The research suggests that targeted social emotional lessons increases relationship skills, leading to a more positive classroom environment. However, it must be noted that this could be related to students' natural development at the ages of 9 and 10. Ethical connections include targeted lessons foster a healthy setting for social emotional development. Targeted social emotional lessons build an inclusive environment leading to a more positive classroom community. Teaching targeted lessons increases the occurrence of positive relationship skills. How will I use this beyond the classroom? I would like to support my school in becoming a lighthouse leader by submitting my findings to my administration. I'd also like to support the school by presenting my findings during professional development at the beginning of the year and advocate for the use of Leader in Me lessons to build students' relationship skills. I would also like to support teachers by modeling Leader in Me lessons during morning meetings, advocating for the use of relationship skills lessons to improve the classroom community. So, what are my implications as a teacher? My research indicates an increased need for social emotional learning lessons in the classroom. As a leader, I will continue to complete Leader in Me lessons in the classroom and model the techniques for my school. As an advocate, my research calls for the increased use of targeted social emotional lessons in the classroom to increase students' relationship building skills and build a classroom community focusing on NACCE standards 1.2, 1.3, and 1.3D. I intend to advocate for the use of social emotional learning in the classroom through presentations at professional development. Finally, leader in the field of elementary education. I will continue to lead in the field through advocacy and increased training in social emotional learning courses, including attending the Leadership Symposium in Atlanta this school year. Next, I would like to speak with you about my professional learning plan, where I focused on the question, how can project-based learning, known as PBL, improve outcomes for diverse learners in the classroom? I wanted to focus on this question because I noticed that teachers in my school would shy away from project-based learning for diverse students because they did not know how to support them. My goals were to determine how to support diverse learners through project based learning and determine how to increase social, language, and academic developments of diverse learners through project based learning units and strengthen my understanding of community partnerships through the lens of project based learning. From this, I included my understandings. My project based learning builds upon schemas naturally found in the brain that students bring with them to the classroom. Project based learning helps students make connections, build stronger schema, and create new neurological pathways to help them understand new topics, creating an active learning environment best suited for diverse learners. This was supported through Coleman 2026. My next understanding was project based learning is a teaching method that is naturally differentiating, which is important for diverse learners, and builds upon the funds of knowledge individual students bring to the classroom. This, in turn, promotes an engaging learning environment. I found this in articles written by Bergeron and Dinchev. Finally, my last understanding, a child's relationship with the community helps create a project based learning environment where students push themselves to achieve more. This was found in articles written by Edutopia, videos by PBL Works, and articles by White House. So, what are the implications? The projected impact. Through this research, there will be a shift to a more equitable and inclusive classroom environment designed to support the needs of diverse learners. Learning will become active and meaningful, not passive and abstract. Communities will partner with schools to create an enriching environment for all learners, shifting school culture to a more culturally responsive one. Assessments will no longer rely on traditional testing, shifting to a more diverse evaluative assessment system designed to support each learner's unique needs and backgrounds. In conclusion, throughout my journey through this master's degree program, I've learned to work with diverse populations, improve my relationship with stakeholders, and advocated for students. I've learned to research, reflect on my practices, and take action where I normally would not have. I've become a teacher who seeks to improve the world of education for her students, not one who sits comfortably to the side. My classroom is no longer a place for passive learning. It is a place where students of all backgrounds come to build their own understanding amongst peers with unique experiences and cultures. It is a place where respect, understanding, and communication act as the three pillars to success. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. I will be happy to answer them. Thank you so much.